Hello everyone, and welcome to a very new series to the channel, Mortal Kombat Across the Multiverse. Now, unlike my explorative history of series, which tackles the character within the main canon of games, for this, I really wanted to deviate away from that formula and explore beyond the horizons of the established mainline, allowing us to take a look and see how the characters have evolved outside the main continuity, giving us different versions of a character that stray away from that of the norm. This allows for a pretty interesting deep dive throughout the franchise that allows us to see what influences and changes have impacted the character with each different iteration. With that said, in today's episode, we will be focusing on the iconic Cryomancer of the franchise and fan-beloved Blue Ninja of the series, Sub-Zero. But in order for us to do such an ambitious undertaking, I do wish to note that I will solely be focusing on his movies, shows, and game spin-offs as the main centerpiece of this video. I know there exists an ever so loosely canon comic book line published by Malibu back in the 90s, but honestly, that entire line actually deserves a video in itself to do it justice, as there's just so many characters and comes out so early in the franchise that a lot of characters there haven't quite developed yet. And I mean, for God's sake, Scorpion even has a mace instead of a kunai, hence why it deserves its own video. But before we dive into things, I do actually strongly recommend watching the History of Sub-Zero episode, as the character from the main line of games basically serve as the blueprint to which each and every other version would be based off. It serves as a really handy push-off point to this video. And hey, if you like this series and wish to see more, as it is something completely new here, please do give this video a thumbs up and tick that bell to stay up to date with all that we do here. So with that said, let's begin. Now, our first non-canon game appearance is actually that of Mortal Kombat Shaolin monks. Unlike the typical 1v1 standard set forth from previous titles, Shaolin Monk actually opts for a beat-em-up style of gameplay, with the premise of its main story being a reinterpretation of Mortal Kombat 2, having both Liu Kang and Kung Lao behind the steering wheel as the game's main leads. In this game, the Sub-Zero mantle is donned by none other than Kuai Liang, seemingly on the run from the Lin Kuei, having travelled to the Netherrealm in the hopes of saving his brother. Here, he would encounter the Shaolin monks, mistaking them for undead souls, which leads to a fight between them. But before things can turn ugly, it is ended early by Liu Kang, who recognizes his attire, knowing full well that this couldn't have been the same person at the first tournament. So in exchange for saving his life, Sub-Zero finds a common ground between the two, assisting them in their pursuit of Kitana, as it allows him to dive deeper into the Netherrealm. But once in these wastelands, he would be distracted by Scorpion. With vengeance in his mind and heart, he would abandon the two to track down his brother's killer, bidding the Shaolin farewell. Kuai Liang makes one final appearance in the game a little later on, where he can be seen fighting his own brother, now under the Noob Saibot mantle, encountering the Shaolin once more, before then pursuing his brother. Now, Sub-Zero in this game is actually a fully playable character, as you can use him in both the story mode and the game's versus mode, albeit playing as him in the story only as a reskin of Liu and Lao, but you still gain access to your full repertoire and toolkit. Sadly, this entire plotline is left unfinished, as the Shaolin Monk sequel, Fire and Ice, would be cancelled in very early development. This then takes us onto our next non-canon game, the infamous, fabled, and very controversial Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe. This game would actually take place in its entirely own separate continuity, with the story itself split into two different halves, one being focused from the Mortal Kombat character perspective, and the other being focused from the DC side, as both did inevitably intertwine. In a very strange turn of events, Shao Kahn and Darkseid are merged due to a boon tube and a portal being opened in the same place in two separate realities. This rift causes the creation of Dark Khan, who then begins to inflict fighters with furious rage as their worlds collide. Narratively, the events of this game presumably take place after the end of MK3, as Shao's invasion has failed and he is severely weakened, meaning that it is Kuai Liang donning the mantle once more. And in the aftermath of the Emperor's defeat, the merging of worlds caused people to just disappear. And with the Lin Kuei's numbers dwindling, Kuai sets out to get answers by attacking Liu Kang, believing that the champion could be the culprit behind this. But in defeat, he learns that the Lin Kuei aren't the only victims, as there are many members of the White Lotus Society who have also suddenly disappeared. Thus, realizing that there is something far more sinister going on, Kuai Liang would travel out to unfamiliar lands, to the Fortress of Solitude, having him here collide with the likes of the Kryptonian Superman. In most instances, the Cape's Big Blue would have the advantage, but the fluctuating power of rage allows him to freeze Kal-El. Yet, this is all temporary, as once he is found by Diana, Wonder Woman, he would be swiftly defeated, and needing answers herself, he would be restrained and taken to the Watchtower for interrogation. However, the Cryomancer is as clueless as she is, later being able to break free with the assistance of Jackson Briggs. And with time passing and their options dwindling, he realizes that the only person with answers could be Quan Chi, now sealed away to the depths of the Netherrealm. But to get answers, he seeks both guidance and an audience with Raiden. Not someone that would give up this information so easily, because in this timeline, the Lin Kuei have a conflicting history with Earthrealm, putting him at odds with the god till they fight. And with Kuai victorious, he is able to convince the god of his change of heart, who then points him in the right direction, which unfortunately does take him to Gotham City, where he gets into a brawl with Deathstroke and defeats the assassin before arriving at the Batcave. Here, he is confronted by the Caped Crusader, and being unprepared for Sub-Zero's arrival, he would be defeated. Yet, before he could get answers, in a blink of an eye, he would be ensnared by Scorpion's spear, dragged to the Netherrealm where he would find Quan Chi. Then finally, able to learn of his horrific answers, that the two worlds were merging and that both would perish. By escaping the Netherrealm, Sub-Zero is able to relay this message to Raiden, but the Thunder God just scolds him for enabling Quan's escape. That is, until the Necromancer appears before them, saying that they all must band together for the oncoming storm. And this leads to a very strange team-up between the likes of Scorpion and Sub-Zero, as the two can be seen battling Lex Luthor and Catwoman in a losing effort. Kuai would make his final few appearances during the climax of the game, as the worlds are being ripped apart by Dark Khan, forcing both sides to fight for his amusement. Eventually, this is stopped once Dark Khan is defeated, and the worlds are separated once more. What's interesting is that in the aftermath of these events, it actually looks like Batman made quite the impression on Kuai Liang, cutting his ties with the Lin Kuei, and becoming a similar heroic-like figure in Earthrealm's defense. Currently, there's been no follow-up nor sequel, thus this marks the end of this Sub-Zero. Taking us onto our next game here, Injustice 2. And here, he serves as a crossover, non-canon DLC character, being portrayed by Kuai Liang yet again, and we actually learn that this is the same Sub-Zero from the end of Mortal Kombat X, where after fending off Koto's forces, he accidentally stumbles into a portal, winding up in the world of Injustice. In his arcade ladder ending, we would see him assist Batman's insurgency with defeating Brainiac. Yet upon trying to return back to his world, the gateway would instead lead to the Phantom Zone, unleashing a wrathful Superman and other horrors from within. So Sub-Zero would continue to remain in this world, as he would continue to defend it. With the games now covered, let's actually talk about the live action side of this character, taking us all the way back to the fan-adored 1995 adaptation. Now this iteration of Sub-Zero plays a very minor role in the film, acting as more of a bodyguard to Shang Tsung than that of an assassin. In saying that, Bi-Han does have some pretty great scenes here, completely annihilating his exhibition opponents, and later fighting Liu Kang, forcing him to use his wit opposed to his fists. But tragically for the Cryomancer, his defeat does come at his own hand, as he's frozen by water tossed at him. But this isn't quite the end of Sub-Zero, later appearing in its sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, where he unfortunately yet again does play a very brief role, having saved Kitana and Liu Kang from an attack by the Cyber Lin Kuei, freezing smoke as he's blown up by his own bomb. And near instantly, Kuai Liang would reveal his identity to the two, saying that he's here to protect Kitana, as she is prophesied to bring on the downfall of Shao Kahn. Now, as he escorts the two away, they would be ambushed by Scorpion, where a fight would ensue and Sub-Zero would be defeated. Taken off guard and immobilized, this forces Liu Kang to save his life, but by being distracted, the princess would be taken. And with her gone, Kuai Liang is unable to continue his mission, very quickly disappearing from Liu's gaze. You had one job, dude. Our next big on-screen portrayal is more than 2 decades later, with Bi-Han donning the colors once more. And here, Sub-Zero is portrayed in a far more villainous light, as he's thrust front and center as the movie's main antagonist, having killed Hanzo and his family in the film's opening, crushed Jax's arms, and terrorized Cole's family, as they are descendants of Scorpion's bloodline. He would even go on to kidnap them to draw out Cole, being nearly successful, yet in a very strange twist of events, Hanzo is able to return, and with Cole by his side, the two are able to avenge the Shirai Ryu, killing the Cryomancer and ending his torments. But as he's whipped away by dark magic, it looks like he is far from finished. Now there are actually a multitude of live action shows, with one of the more infamous gems of the late 90s being Mortal Kombat Conquest, a 22 episode prequel series that would take place in the 1995 universe, set during the Great Kung Lao period. In this era and time, the Sub-Zero we see is understandably neither Bi-Han nor Kuai Liang, simply just being a nameless ancestor of the mantle. And in this time period, we come to learn just how tight the clutches of the Lin Kuei are on the Cryomancy lineage, having them be indoctrinated and weaponized by its Grand Master, with each generation having replaced the previous Sub-Zero. And over the course of the show, the Sub-Zero we see plays a relatively minor role, but is a formidable antagonist once introduced, as he is hired by the likes of Shang Tsung to eliminate Kung Lao, his allies, as well as steal a teleportation crystal. At first, the Cryomancer looks to be unstoppable, and his sheer overwhelming force and skill easily trumps out Zero's. But as the fight draws out, it becomes very apparent that he has not mastered his powers, fatiguing as the battle goes on, leading to an eventual defeat at the hands of the Great Kung Lao. Now this would not quite be the end for the Cryomancer, as he would appear once again, this time being forced to work alongside Scorpion by order of Shao Kahn and the Lin Kuei. But understandably, tensions run high, and this alliance quickly crumbles. Angered by his betrayal, Scorpion unleashes an attack on his family, actually resulting in the death of his sister, possibly setting up the somewhat eternal feud between the Sub-Zero and Scorpion mantles. The betrayal of Scorpion doesn't just put him at odds with the Spectre, but also the Lin Kuei itself. So by the end of the episode, it becomes an all-out war between Sub-Zero, Scorpion, the Lin Kuei, as well as Lao and his allies, allowing him to sneakily get away. But as a traitor, he is marked by the Lin Kuei, now being tracked by their other assassin, Smoke. So by the end of the series, he does make one final appearance, but is believed to be dead. Sadly, we'll never actually know how true or real this was, as Conquest was cancelled after one season. So the fate of this Sub-Zero is left as a mystery. This then takes us onto the online webisode series released by Machinima, Mortal Kombat Legacy, with the Legacy series itself being a bit of a successful follow-up to the positive fan reception of a short movie, Mortal Kombat Rebirth, a fan-inspired interpretation of the Mortal Kombat universe in the modern day. Yet, Legacy would coincide with the rebooted canon following Mortal Kombat 9, as it served as a way for newer fans to be introduced to these characters, albeit in very different reinterpreted ways. In the case of Sub-Zero, he would get a pretty drastic alteration, because in this portrayal of the character, it is revealed that Bi-Han and Hanzo Hasashi actually grew up together, having played in the fields between their homes, despite them being on the opposing sides. As time passed, they would be separated and forced into their clan's beliefs. So much so that many years later, there would be an altercation with Kuai Liang, forcing Hanzo to retaliate, killing his childhood friend. But much to the surprise of all, despite the feud between the two sides, Bi-Han would actually forgive Hanzo for this attack, not wishing them to follow in the sins of their father. Tragically, following this peace, the annihilation of the Shirai Ryu would ensue, and Quan Chi once more would do this in disguise of Bi-Han, fooling Hanzo into becoming his puppet. So when the two inevitably clash during the tournament, Bi-Han is confused of Hanzo's aggression, as his pleas only fall on his deaf ears. Because of this, Bi-Han would die, and Hanzo was victorious. Thus, with no Season 3 aired, this marks the end of the Sub-Zero legacy here, finally taking us over to the more animated side of things. Beginning with Mortal Kombat, The Legend Begins. Now this was a pseudo-canon prequel tie-in movie designed to take place after the Conquest show, and just prior to that of the 1995 movie. Narratively, it doesn't fit in quite too well with the rest of the continuity, hence why it is pseudo-canon. But this version does recap the eternal feud between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, with of course, Bi-Han winning. Moving on, we do have Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm. This was a more kid-friendly oriented show, designed to capture the audience that came from the success and boom of Mortal Kombat 3 and the 1995 movie. Because of this, the nature of this timeline is actually extremely unique, roughly taking place in the same time frame as Mortal Kombat 3, yet with blended elements from the movie, such as how Liu Kang froze Bi-Han. So needless to say that the Sub-Zero we have here is indeed Kuai Liang, and his origins do align with that of his original timeline counterpart, having been raised alongside Smoke and escaped due to the Cyber Initiative, later aligning himself with the Earthrealm Defenders as he fights off threats from within and outside the realm. During the show's run, he is able to save Smoke from the Lin Kuei's brainwashing, yet the two end up parting ways, as Smoke can't accept that he has betrayed the Lin Kuei. So, with the show only having lasted 13 episodes, that is all that we currently know of this particular Sub-Zero. This takes us onto the more recent big animated movies, with Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge being the first. During this installment, Bi-Han plays yet another minor role. Whilst visually present in the opening massacre, it is once again Quan Chi framing Bi-Han. He only actually physically appears much later on during the events of the tournament himself, where he is puzzled by the misguided rage of Scorpion, later being tackled and impaled on a spike at the bottom of the pit, marking the death of Bi-Han in this timeline. The repercussions of these events would be felt in its sequel, Battle of the Realms, with Kuai taking over the mantle. Here, he can be seen training alongside Smoke in preparation to avenge his brother. But much like the original canon, the Cyber Initiative does begin, and Smoke is transformed against his will. This, however, would not halt his quest for vengeance, as throughout the movie, Kwai would actively hunt down Hanzo, even with his former allies, the Cyber Lin Kuei, caught in the crossfire. His path of rage emulates the same misguided anger that Scorpion once had. And much like the last film, this anger is only simmered once the truth of Quan Chi is revealed. Now, during the movie itself, there is an overarching plot of Shinnok acquiring the Kamidogus, as he seeks to ascend to that of the One Being. But this plot thread is resolved rather quickly by Liu Kang's own ascension to divinity, putting an end to the god and restoring the realms back to their former beings. The next animated movie is actually Mortal Kombat Snowblind. But unlike the previous two, Snowblind is an Elseworld story set in a reality of Kano's vision, somewhat piggybacking off the end of Mortal Kombat 11's Multiverse theory, with how arcade ladder endings are all canonical in some way. In this timeline and era, upon Kronika's defeat, it would be Kano that weaves the hourglass of time, creating a desolate wasteland where the heroes of old are gone and Kano is king. In this Mad Max-inspired world, Kuai Liang is a shell of his former self, as prior to the events of the film, the world of man would be overrun by wild revenants, causing chaos, destruction, and death across the land. Seeing it as a challenge, Kuai would lead an assault against the undead, with his pride blinding him to the truth of the situation. With his forces overrun and the undead amassing, the Cryomancer would unleash a storm so wild that it killed all in the city he tried to protect. Bleeding with guilt, Kuai would renounce his powers, giving up his life as an assassin, and actively try to hide his past, even with nightmares terrorizing him every night. To guarantee such devastation would never occur again, he would actually make a deal with Scorpion, that should he ever lose control once again, it would be he that takes him to the Netherrealm to never hurt another innocent soul. The events of Snowblind itself would take place many years later, with the world in the firm clutches of Kano, where his black dragons would wander, kill, and purge whomever they desired. Kuai Liang is but a simple farmer with no known past and simply sells food to get by day. That is, until he is recognized by Kenshi, who is able to goad him into showing his skill and even tries to convince him to take him on as a student. Understandably, due to his own history, he actually declines, being more of a pacifist and even kneeling before the Black Dragons to protect Kenshi. The ambitious nature of the young man causes him to be beaten by Tremor and later blinded by Shang Tsung, leading to him winding up on Kuai's farm. Feeling sympathy for the young man, he does nurse the Takahashi back to health, but can't help realize his unique relationship to Sento. Believing that there was far more than meets the eye, he would teach the young naive boy, having him hone and strengthen his senses, allowing him to replace what was once lost. However, the tyranny of the Black Dragons forced Kenshi's hand, with his heroic endeavors striking a chord with Kuai Liang. Finding no honor in watching as the world burns, he would call upon Scorpion and suit up one final time to take down Kano's kingdom, unleashing a never-ending blizzard as he cuts and tears his way through the Black Dragons. And his final duel with Kano is absolutely brutal, as he loses an arm in the process. But it's here where he begins to rip him apart, piece by piece, where he is then crushed. With Kano's death and the hourglass gone, Kuai would uphold his end of the bargain, leaving for the Netherrealm with Hanzo, but tells Kenshi to carry on the spirit of the Lin Kuei, with him as its new Grand Master and visionary, thus marking an end to this tale of Kuai Liang's story. So, this covers every unique and different iteration of Sub-Zero's character in film, TV shows, and games. series. And as you can tell, there's been quite a few different interpretations of the character through the different ages. So with different creative minds and influences, you can see how this character has evolved over the course of time. He's become so much more than just the blue ice ninja of the franchise. So with that said, I really do hope you have enjoyed the ride. And what would you say was your favorite interpretation of this character, outside that of the main canon? Please do comments down below. Now, I gotta be real, I don't know how common these episodes will be, as they do take a lot of work. But if you really enjoyed it, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and let me know who else would you like me to make an episode on. So for now everyone, that has been it for me. So as always, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting. I'll catch you all in the next one.